Okay, we're continuing with this book, The Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes by me, Pete Rogers. We're doing Genius Quotes. We're on part 8 of Genius Quotes. Okay, and the first one is coming from Oliver Wendell Holmes. And he says, "The world always is ready to receive talent with open arms." And basically, you know, people get good grades in school, they're conformist and obedient, behave like accountants, boring. They'll get a decent job, make decent money. But very often, Oliver Wendell Holmes says, it does not know what to do with genius. Talent is a docile creature. It bows its head meekly while the world slips a collar over it. It draws its load cheerfully, and it is patient of the bit and the whip. But a genius is always impatient of the harness. Its wild blood makes it hard to train. Yeah, I can just say that. I was very often in trouble when I was in medical school, when I was in residency, when I was in fellowship. It's like anytime, my experience in conventional medicine is, anytime somebody tries to make things better, they get attacked by like all these administrators. They get attacked by people who are high up in the food chain. Like let's say you are, you know, at some Ivy League school and you are making a lot of money off Big Pharma. Somebody comes along and says you can treat something with a vegan diet. Well, that makes your department look bad. That makes you look bad. You're promoting this drug for such and such a company, and this doctor comes along and says you can cure coronary artery disease with a low-fat vegan diet. That doesn't mesh with your goal of selling that drug and getting money from that company. So what I'm trying to say is when new people come along and innovate in conventional sectors, man, they get a piss flood of wrath directed at them. Okay, Oliver Wendell Holmes continues. Talent is a very common family trait. Genius belongs rather to individuals. Yeah, you'll see a family where you got 3 doctors in the same family, but geniuses are rare. Talent is often to be envied, and genius is commonly to be pitied. It is a perpetual insult to mediocrity. Its every word is a trespass against someone's vested ideas. Yeah, lots of people who are genius are always in trouble, what I've seen in conventional medicine. Like I said, Stuart Geller, the great imaging-guided surgeon over at Harvard, they were always pissed off at him. I've seen other ones, too, where that kind of happens. They're kind of outcasts. They're often kind of poor. Like I knew this great imaging-guided surgeon over at University of Minnesota, and he was like that. And I've seen other guys, like Dave Schultz and Mark Schultz of wrestling, despite being world and Olympic champions, they were kind of getting screwed around, pushed out of jobs, and they ended up going with DuPont. And that's how Dave lost his life, crazy DuPont, the whole Foxcatcher story. Anyways, continuing, now the quotes of John Stuart Mill from the Victorian age in England. He said, "Persons of genius are a small minority, but in order to have them, it is necessary to preserve the soil in which they grow. Genius can only breathe freely in an atmosphere of freedom." Yeah, they're going to be the most nonconformist people because they're the ones who are most skeptical of convention. So it has to be a society that allows them to be that way. Ancient Greece and Athens was the best. Italian Renaissance Italy was magnificent. And there was some good stuff in the Victorian age, both the Catholic revival as well as the Protestant component with pre-Raphaelite brotherhood and whatnot. John Stuart Mill continues, "Persons of genius are more individual than other people. They are less capable of consequently fitting themselves without hurtful compression into any of the small number of molds which society provides in order to save its members the trouble of having to form their own character." Okay, John Stuart Mill continues, "People think genius is a fine thing if it enables a man to write an exciting poem or to paint a picture. But in its true sense, that of originality in thought and action, though no one says that it is not a thing to be admired, nearly all at heart think that they can do very well without it. Unhappily, this is too natural to be wondered at. Originality is the one thing which unoriginal minds do not feel the need of." Okay, so yeah, a really original great thinker is often going to be pissing people off. Like I remember when I was in my fellowship in neuroradiology. Okay, there was this one guy who was a neuroradiologist. I forget where he was at. I even forget his name, but at the time I was real excited about all his books and papers because he was doing all kinds of new interesting things, some of them a little crazy. And then I knew some people that were very high up in the Radiological Society of North America, and they hated this guy. And I'm like, how could you hate this guy? He's doing all this original work. But they hated him. And I was like, gee, that's the thanks he gets for figuring out all this stuff. The guy was brilliant. Okay, now we're going to do a couple quotes by Ludwig von Mises about geniuses. "Innovators and creative geniuses cannot be reared in schools. They are precisely the men who defy what the school has taught them. Education rears disciples, imitators, routinists, not pioneers of new ideas and creative geniuses. The schools are not nurseries of progress and improvement, but conservatories of tradition and unvarying modes of thought. Yeah, that's sad but true. I was kind of shocked, but looking back, all the pre-med programs in the whole United States, they're all a joke. They're all a complete joke. The students have tremendous amount of the time wasted with just nonsense, you know. They don't learn the chemistry of the human body. They learn organic chemistry, how to make paint, okay, synthesized paint. It's a joke, and it's like Arthur Schopenhauer said back in his day, none of the philosophy professors were philosophers. They kind of thought philosophy was a joke. They just wanted the title for status. And then a real philosopher, Schopenhauer, comes along, and he can't get a job. They won't let him lecture. Finally, they let him lecture, and no one goes to his lectures. And he's the best philosopher Germany ever produced. I like Goethe. He's certainly more upbeat and encouraging. Nietzsche is entertaining. Kant is a scumbag. A lot of natural Germans love Schiller, but Schopenhauer is the one who taught me the most useful stuff that I incorporate into learning how to write and other things. So anyways, let's see. Oh, I maybe have another quote or two for today. Let's see here. Oh yeah, I got a little more Ludwig von Mises. Okay, and then that'll be it. One more from Ludwig von Mises. Society cannot contribute anything to the breeding and growing of genius men. A creative genius cannot be trained. There are no schools for creativeness. A genius is precisely a man who defies all schools and all rules, who deviates from the traditional roads of routine and opens up new paths through land inaccessible before. A genius is always a teacher. He is always self-made. The first thing a genius needs is to breathe free air. And it's kind of like John Taylor Gatto said, if you just leave people alone like in the 1800s, you'll produce a lot more geniuses than the public school system, where the public school system is designed to prevent the development of genius. You know, no privacy, no free speech, no creative work, rote memorization instead of understanding, all your time all day long wasted, time at home wasted with stupid meaningless homework. Okay, whereas a genius would be somebody like, look at Oscar Wilde. He was homeschooled. He already, by the time he was, you know, what you would call age to finish high school, had learned a bunch of different languages and read extensively about the ancient Greeks, for example. Look at John Stuart Mill. His father taught him Greek so he could read the ancient Greeks at a young age. Studying the ancient Greeks, that makes people smarter. You know, Einstein also said you should let kids read all the fairy tales. The fairy tales are very valuable to read. You see a lot of, you know, bipolar opposition of thoughts, and that's very good, that contrasting. A lot of time reading on one's own, pursuing one's interests, that develops deep thought. Being alone, just reading a lot, those are things that really develop a person's brain. And if you want to see an interesting family about developing genius, look at the Polgar sisters, where the father, you know, wanted to prove that he could create a genius, so he taught his daughters how to play chess. He liked chess because it was competitive and you could see who was the best player, so he could prove that he had produced the best player. And they knew multiple languages, all of his kids. I don't know exactly how many, but I think they knew at least 3 languages, and I think they knew significantly more than that. So anyways, that's it for Genius Quotes for today.